Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And we come to a release which was made in January 2024, and this is for a title which has been designated by Criterion at spine number 1202. So in fact, it's my understanding that into the new year of 2024, this is the first newly minted spine numbered title in the collection. We've had some reissues and re-releases to welcome us in the new year 2024, but this one that I'm about to show is the first newly spine numbered title to emerge in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog, again to greet us in January 2024. And my goodness, what a film this is. This is a film which is described as being from the year 1996, and the name of the filmmaker is John Sayles. And the name of the work is Lone Star. This is the film, the sprawling, epic, towering achievement of a film, which is described as being from the year 1996, and it is from the producers R. Paul Miller and Maggie Renzi, and it is the director of photography Stuart Dryburgh, and the editor is John Sayles, and the writer of this film is John Sayles, and the director of this film is John Sayles. This is a John Sayles film, and among its iconic, legendary cast, this is incredible cast, included in which are, Chris Cooper and Clifton James and Elizabeth Pena and Miriam Colon and Joe Morton and Ron Canada and Tony Plana and Frances McDormand and Matthew McConaughey and Chris Christopherson and others. This is an incredible cast, and I might have missed some others, but it's across the board. It is fantastic, and they are making up the characters and the human beings that are part of the lives and struggles and mysteries that are unfolding before our very eyes when we watch this incredible work from John Sayles and company, and that is this Lone Star. I cannot express enough just how excited I was when I first heard that the Criterion Collection was going to release this film, Lone Star. And now that they have released it, courtesy of this splendid 4K UHD plus Blu-ray physical media release, now that they've released it and provided me with the opportunity to watch this film again. I've seen this film a number of times already. I've been very fortunate to have been able to encounter this film early on in my life. But now being able to watch it again in this way, in this presentation, being able to access it once again with quote-unquote a freshness of perspective on the one hand, but also recalling just why I have taken to this film so much over the years after watching it many times. I realize that this is one of the great highlights, and this is a wonderful cause for celebration to celebrate the legacy of this film, Lone Star, to remind us of the importance and brilliance of the legacy of the cinematic art that is John Sayles and company. And to have it in such a wonderfully rendered presentation and release such as this from Criterion is, as I say, truly a celebratory event in the lives and the community of cinema lovers the world over, in my own very humble opinion. To be able to watch this film again, thanks to this release, reminds me just how deep and emotional and resonant and complex this film is. This is a truly complex film, but it never suffers under the weight of its complexity. This film is so finely tuned, it is so well balanced, it is masterfully balanced. There are so many characters, and there are a lot of asides too, as well as the directness of the quote unquote plot of the film. So in that way, it has so many textures and layers, and so many balls rolling, and so many arcs that are moving at a frenzied pace, but also in a way that allows us to stop and sit and breathe and be with these characters and get to know these characters in these quiet, intimate setting moments, or sometimes moments that feel maybe almost peripheral to the main plot or action of the film. But that doesn't affect the pace of this. Everything counts, everything matters, even those little details that might seem at the time of first being exposed to them, those little details might seem unimportant or they might seem mundane, but my goodness, when we reach the conclusion of this film and we realize just how sprawling this is, how wide reaching consequences have actually reached, what the stakes are for everyone concerned, and just how those stakes have been raised, not just over the course of geography, not just over the course of the multi-ethnic and racially complex dynamic of this community, but also through time and space itself, temporally and also physically, and then thus spiritually and emotionally, when one considers just how vast the effects of the events and consequences that we have been privy to in watching this film, when we realize just how vast and how epic those stakes are, wow, really, truly blows my mind. It is just an unbelievable film experience. It has always been an unbelievable film experience. It's one of the films that I cherish highly. And to have this release like we do right now today in 2024 is a wonderful reason to celebrate or re-celebrate the legacy of this film, Lone Star, to celebrate or re-celebrate the legacy of John Sayles. And I dare say, too, that this is a film that remains relevant and resonant even now in the 2020s. I mean, this was a film that was made in 96. But even now, I mean, it was resonant and powerful then. It remained resonant and powerful over the years, and even now is quite relevant indeed. And in that way, it's questions, I think, don't yield easy answers. And it's very provocative and sometimes maybe suggesting things that might be a bit much, might be a bit shocking, or maybe not just a bit, quite a lot shocking, in fact. And I mean that in terms of the questions it poses, in terms of the contours of maybe, for lack of a better phrase, a type of social commentary, but also in terms of the directness of the plot. And so there are so many pages, so many ripples, so many folds within the masterwork and beautifully set up lattice work that is Lone Star, that I think it rewards so much upon repeat viewing, as well as giving us a sense of how all these various people are affected, not just in the pockets or the modes of storytelling that we see in terms of the various characters that we meet, which is masterfully told, by the way, but also the consequences thereof, both in terms of a metaphorical or macro experience that we can extend beyond the contours of the frame. I mean, that's the stuff of legendary filmmaking right there, and so to have an example of that here in the form of Lone Star, and now to be made more widely available for as many people, hopefully, to see as possible, thanks courtesy to this great Criterion release. This makes me very happy indeed. So, Lone Star is in the Criterion Collection, and if we were to try to speak about the plot or story structure of this film, Lone Star, how would we do this? Let's see. Again, for the benefit of those who have not yet seen this great film, Lone Star, I don't want to spoil as I say, the various folds and ripples and pages of this film, because I too remember the day when I first saw this film and being totally thunderstruck and bewildered by its power and mystery. and its questions. Again, the first time I saw it, it was a, a beautifully numbing experience. And so I don't want to spoil that for those who have not yet seen it. But if we were to try to flesh out a bit the contours of the story or the plot structure, we would focus in on the present day. This is an area which is in Texas, so it's a rural area of Texas, of Frontera, which is a very apropos name for reasons which we will get into as the film progresses. But quite immediately, we are confronted with the discovery of some skeletal remains, human skeletal remains. And it's not clear immediately who this is or who this could be or what the circumstances were surrounding this death. Are they natural causes or unnatural causes, etc.? But this sets the plot in motion. This is the catalyst, if you will, for what one might call the murder mystery element of Lone Star. So this sets into motion allows us, the viewers, to be introduced to some members of this community, the small town community, this Texas community, among which are, for example, Hollis, the mayor, who is portrayed by Clifton James, and then also Chris Cooper's character, Sam, the sheriff, one of the main characters of this, who is essentially heading this investigation as to who this dead body is, and after discovering who the dead body is, what happened. And that then leads to probably, maybe, perhaps, or perhaps not, you're going to have to watch the film to find out, the potential of a quote-unquote murder mystery or an inquiry or investigation. And what this leads to which is one of the dynamic aspects of this film, Lone Star, is an investigation into the past. And the way for Sam, the sheriff, the Chris Cooper character, to investigate the past, he has to question and probe and inquire about aspects of the present. That means meeting other people in the community that may or may not have had something to do with what has happened in the past, and may or may not know the secrets that are hitherto locked away under the ground, inside the sands, deep within the hearts of the people who were in the past and may or may not be in the present. And so that's my very elliptical and quite purposefully cryptic way of trying to describe the sort of the temporal dynamic of this film. So this is a film that does set up the present day aspect and also does provide certain, say, a storytelling of matters that have occurred in the past, shall we put it that way. And so this allows for our sheriff character, Sam, to also confront other aspects of his own, say, character arcs and also the arcs of others. So we understand that part of his own conversation with the past, Chris Cooper's character's conversation with the past, is his reckoning with the legacy that is the legend of his father, who had been the sheriff of this community as well. And this is his father being Buddy Deeds. And in the scenes that we sometimes see, Buddy Deeds will be seen to be portrayed by the character, by the actor Matthew McConaughey. And so when we are privy to some of these aspects of the past, we see Matthew McConaughey's character encountering other characters there as well. I mentioned the Hollis character. There's also Otis character as well, who is portrayed in the present day by Ron Canada. And we also see his story, his own story in terms of his role in the community, or how he fits in or not in the community. How the African American aspect of this community is either being confronted by or trying to otherwise deal with certain racial and race relation based issues of this community, and his role in terms of his character's a bar establishment and also his economic prosperity in the present day also has its links to his story as a younger man in the past, which again may or may not have something to do with not just the Buddy Deeds character, the legendary sheriff character in the past, but also his story prior to becoming sheriff, and then also what may or may not be links to this dead body that was found at the outset of the film. And so that already opens the door for certain race relation based issues that are also embedded very deeply into the heart of the story itself, because again, these characters are affected by these things again on the periphery of the film and also beyond the contours of the frame of the film, but also directly relevant to the quote-unquote murder mystery of the film, where people in the past are questioning about people in the present are questioning about things in the past, and that has to do with a whole wide range of a landscape of human emotion. Not to mention, of course, the way that generational shifts and things that happen in the past in one generation will affect the future generations to come. And that is a community level, that's also on a family level. And thus, that also paves the way for one of the other great themes of this film, parents and children. And that's certainly the case for the Otis character. And that also allows for one of the other main characters to envelop or to be part of this, and this is the character of the Joe Morton character, Dell character, and that also sees another entry into the complex nature of the current present day and the relationship between the community on the one hand and the military on the other, and that allows for the Joe Morton character to enter into the picture, and that also allows for his own conversations with certain parts of the military personnel under his command, and also because he is a high-ranking official or a military position, and also how that has to do with race relations and the struggles of race relations that are occurring in the present day, and how they are mirroring or how they are affecting or affected by race relations as they occurred in the past, as we see them both told to us and also expressed to us in cinematic form, as John Sayles and Stuart Dryburgh and company show us in the way that structure. And we'll talk a little bit about the structure momentarily. But already, I'm breathless because there's just focusing in on this one aspect of the film goes into these various modes, and I haven't even begun to talk about some of the other characters. This is an example of how Lone Star operates, right? Because we start with this essentially murder mystery, and you would go step in certain directions, and it leads into so many ways, so many different directions that may or may not, again, in the guise or contours of a quote-unquote murder mystery, they might seem on the surface to be maybe red herrings or maybe false clues, etc. But there is also something operating in this, say, aspect of going down the paths of these various plot threads that they will take us to, because they do have consequence, whether they might be a consequence on a mundane level or on a serious, significant, quite almost astronomically universal consequence. Everything is connected to something else, which is one of the great powerful things about this film, Lone Star, is that things are connected, even where connections might seem to not be there. They are there, and so that is one of the powerful aspects of this film, Lone Star. And again, it's stemming from this great structure, which is the murder mystery, or quote unquote murder mystery, or the death inquiry. Let's put it that way, into the events that really greet us when we start the film, the discovery of these remains. And that, again, is part of, let's going back to the Chris Cooper character, the Sam character. He's reckoning with the past. He's trying to figure out what's going on with these remains and what's going on. And then also part of that, too, is his reckoning with this community and his role in the community, and also his own past and his own, say, submerged or his maybe suppressed feelings that he might have for other people. And that introduces us to another part of this community, another member of this community, who is portrayed by, this is Pilar. This is the character portrayed by Elizabeth Pena. And we understand that Sam and Pilar had feelings for each other in the past, but they drifted apart due to their own lives and their own relationships separate from each other. But now, due to circumstances that have brought them back to this place, they find themselves meeting and reuniting, and maybe or maybe not rekindling some feeling that they might have had for each other. This then leads to aspects about other members of the community. For example, Pilar's mother, this is Mercedes, this is portrayed by the legendary Miriam Colon, and how she may or may not have direct information about some of the circumstances involving Hollis, Buddy, etc., but also digging deeper we might come to realize that she and other, say, maybe generational figureheads in the community, such as her and Clifton James and Ron Canada and others, as we, guided by Sam's journey and inquiry into the circumstances involving the discovery of this dead body, we come to realize that these generational figureheads in this community may know more than they let up. And that has to do with the past scenes. Again, going back to the past and seeing how Matthew McConaughey and others are reacting. But also, we understand that in the past there is another important character. And that character is Charlie Wade, who is portrayed by Chris Christopherson in one of the most frightening and towering and vicious performances. It is one of the most incredible performances in this film, in a film where there are incredible performances across the board, and we realize how the past has some deep, dark shadows that try to remain hidden, or perhaps the generational figureheads of the current day might know more than they are letting up. Maybe they don't, but maybe they do. And this is also part of this story. Again, things are directly related to this murder mystery plot, but then they are also directly related to, or they become inadvertently related to other aspects. So going back to Miriam Colon's character, Mercedes, and the relationship between Mercedes and Pilar, mother-daughter relationship, again, generational relationships, parents-children, how acts or consequences or philosophies of one generation have effects on the other generation. This is something that crosses the boundaries of time and space, right? And we see potentially the direct ramifications of things that might have happened in the past that are affecting the people of the current generation. I'm speaking about characters like Pilar, like the Elizabeth Pena character, like Sam, the Chris Cooper character, like Dell, the Joe Morton character, and others, and how their actions might potentially affect the generations below them, the younger generations, because now they are themselves finding out that they are becoming parents, or they are in the position of being parents to now the newer, younger generation. So it becomes this maybe unintentional set of cyclical consequences that are exemplified by how the story and the film Lone Star is setting up this mystery. And we understand that it has something to do with the past. It has something to do with this nefarious figure portrayed by Chris Christopherson, and maybe how, why, and yes or no, how some of the other figures that we know have grown in later years to the people that are portrayed by Ron Canada and Clifton James and Miriam Colon, etc., how they may or may not have had a hand somehow or another in these events that we are privy to in the past. It is mind-blowing. It just it staggers the. It's staggering just how epic this setup is, and at the same time, and still remaining completely relevant and completely organic to all the situations we have, as I say, explorations of race and class and ethnicity in this story. There are moments where, for example, we are allowed to sit into like a parent-teacher meeting where involving Pilar, the Elizabeth Pena character, and others, talking about how history should be taught in schools, or what events should be focused on, or how certain parents feel about certain maybe teaching philosophical viewpoints in approaches to history, Texas history, and others. And this goes into one of the key, almost I don't want to say battlegrounds, but one of the key points of debate of this film, which I think is so engaging in this day. And let me put it this way: is it remember the Alamo or forget the Alamo? That becomes, I think, this grand question about how to reckon with history, and not just how to reckon with history, how to reckon with viewpoints and philosophies about reckoning with history, how to regard history, how should we devote our energy to what parts of history, because when we do, we risk not devoting energy to other parts of history. So it becomes this battle, in a way, of how to regard things in the past, and that has huge ramifications. Again, both outside the frame of the film, but also within the frame of the film, because this idea about reckoning with history is at the very heart of this mystery. What happened in the past? That itself, reckoning with history. And we see characters in the present day trying to do that, each in their own way, but so brilliantly told. Again, in the context of the directness of the Western mystery thriller aspect of this film, but also beyond. So that's a way in which, again, I'm struggling with my words here, but I'm just, again, so filled to the brim with excitement just how compelling the story structure of this film is. And I haven't even gotten to other aspects of this one. I'll try to get it to now. The way that the time is interwoven in this film in a type of cinema physics is extraordinary. The camera moves in oftentimes where you'll see the same camera movement and it'll suddenly shift without a cut from one time period to another seamlessly. It's again within the same camera movement, and it is done in a way that is not meant. How should I put it? It has a kind of magical, ethereal quality because the camera's gliding, and you'll have someone like, say, Clifton James's Hollis talking about what has happened in a sort of a bar room restaurant area back in the past, and we'll be seeing him in the present day speaking, and then suddenly gliding across the table, and all of a sudden we'll be in the place that he's speaking of in the past. We are in the past. Past becomes present, and that is so brilliantly engaged with on a technical level. Stuart Dryberg and John Sayles and company just really handling that just gracefully to a T, impeccable, perfectly established, perfectly timed, and it is also thematically significant because we understand that past and present are one. They might seem separate, they might seem to be on different planes, but in fact they are more connected than we realize, and perhaps more connected than we might be comfortable with. But in fact, they are so one that they exist, yes, within the same plane of a single camera shot, and often the case may be. This is one of the brilliant aspects of this film, Lone Star, how it shows us that time as a temporal thing, as a malleable thing, is also something that is in a very paradoxical way. It's very unifying, even to the degree that it might be uncomfortable. And this is one of the brilliant technical aspects of it, and it goes to the heart of the themes of this, and also, again, going back to echoing other themes as well, reckoning with history, reckoning with race and ethnic community or communal relations issues, etc. This is all part of the great, how should I put it, a multifaceted dynamic that is at play here in Lone Star, while being a rugged and frightening and a tour de force thriller mystery. There are aspects of it that also have this type of confrontational genre feel, entertaining genre feel, like a Western film. There are also aspects of it that feel very much like a noir film. The idea of some kind of hunting for secrets in the past. There's also this very heartwarming human drama, and I mentioned the relationships and characters. I mean, these characters are so well rendered, and whenever we have two characters or more within the same screen, their feelings are they are emanating off of the screen in a way that is heartwarming and also heart-wrenching at the same time. Take, for instance, the relationship that is displayed between the characters portrayed by Chris Cooper and Elizabeth Pena, for instance, or the generational relationship, Miriam Colon and Elizabeth Pena, their performances, and Mercedes and Pilar, for example, or even Ron Canada and Joe Morton, their relationship, Otis and Dell. It's generations, parents and children, the love or lack of love or seeming lack of love that exists, the coldness, but maybe the cold exterior is masking something that is burning within. It's just a matter of trying to express it in a way that is part of the challenge of these the human frailty that is oh so touching and also emotionally significant and quite astounding indeed. And then when we get to those moments where characters are connecting, we also are confronted possibly with information and themes and discussion points that may or may not have huge ramifications for how these characters are able to connect. And that is also one of the key aspects of this film, Lone Star. It's how this film wraps itself around in its themes in such a brilliant way. It always brings us back to the plot of this. It always brings us back to the plot, is again in a circular way, but also emanates out forward at the same time. I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that it is doing so many things at once. It is emanating outward in a way that seems to be echoing on a macro level things that are touching upon the sort of metaphorical significance of social political commentary, both in the present and also in the future and also in the past. But then also it is also rippling inward at the very same time, reminding us of the intricate nature of the emotional scenes between these characters, or the emotional connections between these characters, and how they are either formed or broken, and what the consequences are for them internally and inwardly. My goodness, the fact that it's doing all of this at once, emanating outwards and inspecting inwards at the same time, masterful. It's very rare, I would say, that films can do this in such a way that feels at the same time so dynamic and also very balanced at the same time. But a film like Lone Star, in my humble opinion, does this so expertly. Yeah. So um, I'm I have to catch myself. It's whew, okay. Lone Star is in the Criterion Collection, and so if you haven't seen the film yet, I would recommend it. It's one of the greats from one of the great filmmakers of the age, and a filmmaker that should be celebrated as much as possible because of films like Lone Star and others. That is John Sayles, and the work that he does here with Maggie Renzi and Stuart Dryburgh and others assembled here too with the greatness of the cast. Uh, Combining to form this masterfully told tale is again something to be celebrated, and something that will be utterly rewarding every time one watches this film. This is the film that is Lone Star. The Criterion Collection has released this film, Lone Star, on this 4K UHD and Blu-ray release, and this is at spine number 1202. And this is the 4K UHD and Blu-ray release, which is what I have here, which means we have two discs, one being the 4K disc and the other being the Blu-ray disc. And you'll find the film watchable on either disc, but also differing between the two is apart from certain technical aspects, we also have the supplements, which will be found on the Blu-ray disc only. But before we get to a discussion of the supplements, let's first talk about the presentation of this. So I have, courtesy of the Criterion Collection here, I have the 4K disc in the player on the TV as well. So you have greeting us with the 4K discs menu. We have this lovely artwork, which is also reminiscent of or mirroring what we have in the artwork for the case. The covered art, which we'll talk about later in this video. But in terms of the presentation, I've taken the liberty of removing the fold-out insert that is part of this Criterion release, and the credits here say about the master, and I quote, "Lone Star is presented in its original aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1. Supervised by director John Sayles and director of photography Stuart Dryburgh, this new digital master was created from the 35mm original camera negative, which was scanned in 4K resolution. The original 2.0 surround soundtrack was remastered from the 35mm magnetic track. Please be sure to enable Dolby Pro Logic decoding on your receiver to properly play the Dolby 2.0 surround soundtrack. The feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR, high dynamic range on the 4K Ultra HD disc, and high definition SDR, standard dynamic range on the Blu-ray." So, I was so stunned when I watched this on the 4K disc, and then I watched it again on the Blu-ray disc, and I watched it again on the 4K disc. And I am so taken with this presentation. I've seen this film many times, but again, and it always has looked quite good to my I admit, very inexperienced eyes and ears. looked and sounded very good to my inexperienced eyes and ears. But I come to realize that this Criterion releases presentation, what it does is it seems to be making things sharper, and the darknesses are deeper, which allows for those glimpses of light that emerge, and the way that maybe certain modes of light reflect upon the faces of people that are sitting there. It makes them quite, uh, uh, um, illuminating, and very powerful indeed. I didn't realize this, but in all the times I'd seen this earlier, say on VHS tape or maybe on an earlier DVD, they've been really great, by the way, because they've been up to now one of the only ways to be able to watch this film, Lone Star, in sort of physical media, home media viewings anyway. But I didn't realize it now, but there had always been this type of almost filter-like aspect to my viewings of those home media releases that is absent here when I watch the film on the Criterion disc. And so without that kind of filter feeling, I feel the ability to access more into this world, and things feel sharper. Things feel quite heavier in that way, and I love that. And I love that it feels less of a separation between myself and watching the film. And I mean that too in the context of the present day scenes and also the scenes in the past, which I really love as well. But I didn't notice this too, but there's also a way in which light is playing. Light and shadow are playing that gives a very quiet stylization to the scenes that are set in the past, which set them off ever so slightly to scenes that are taking place in the present day. And I think that ever so slight edge allows for a kind of recognition of a psychological effect more than anything else. And I think I come to realize that maybe there's a slight difference, especially in the nighttime scenes. But when we get into the daytime scenes, because there's some daytime scenes where the sun, the Texas sun, is really shining forth in this brilliant way, I realize just how close they are in terms of the present and the past. And so I like that playfulness that I think is there, especially when the nighttime scenes occur. But when we have the daytime scenes, there's a kind of a freshness there, which is made even more incredible, because sometimes we have, as I mentioned, the same camera shot movement going from present to past and then back to the present again. And sometimes the camera movement will suggest the uniformity of the look and feel, but other times it might suggest a delineation between the way that something is lit in the present versus the way something is lit in the past, which I love. I love that kind of dynamism, and it's something that I didn't quite notice or didn't quite appreciate fully until I saw this representation from Criterion. So for that and other reasons, I am totally swept up, totally taken by this. It feels, as I say, fresh and invigorating. I don't want to use maybe the oft-used cliche. It feels like watching the film for the first time. I mean, I mean, maybe I should try to resist using cliches like that. And if you're offended by my use of that cliche, I apologize profusely. I really do mean that. I apologize. But I'm not quite sure how better to express the fact that it does feel like watching it fresh and vivacious. But it's also something that I feel so comfortable with. So it's one of those things where this new presentation is allowing me to access things that I had not necessarily been able to access before, which is something that I'm always looking for when I encounter a new presentation of a film that I feel like I'm somewhat comfortable with. It reminds me just how much I have yet to know about this mystery film, Lone Star. And that's the great thing about presentations like this. Thank you very much for showing me just how little I know about this film, and how much more I have to go in watching this. And that's making me want to watch it more thanks to this presentation. So bravo, bravo. I am very, very impressed with how this looks and sounds, courtesy of this Criterion release. And so now let us turn to the Blu-ray, which is what I now have in the machine. And the reason why is because we can talk about the supplements that are accompanying this Criterion release of Lone Star. Once again, you can watch the film on the 4K disc or on the Blu-ray disc. But if you're trying to watch the supplements, you're going to have to put the Blu-ray disc into the machine, which is what I have here. So when we do that, you'll notice immediately that there is the movie and then the chapters, and there isn't a supplements submenu. The word supplements doesn't appear, but rather we go right into John Sayles with Gregory Nava, and then Stuart Dryburgh, and then trailer, and then subtitles. So this is one of those where we don't have our own supplements submenu, but the actual supplements themselves are directly in the main menu. So a very minor point, I know, but it might be indicative of the fact that in terms of quantity, we are not getting as many supplements here as we might say recall the voluminous supplements that we found in other past Criterion releases. So that might be something to keep in mind, but I don't want to take away from the quality of what we get here. And so what do we get? So first up, we get John Sayles with Gregory Nava, and it says, in this conversation recorded for the Criterion Collection in Los Angeles in 2023, filmmaker Gregory Nava talks with director John Sayles about the development and production of Lone Star and Sayles' career in independent cinema. So this is a conversation between the two artists, and they're in the same room and they're sitting across from each other. It's approximately 38 minutes, and this is really great. Gregory Nava has such a reverence and respect for John Sayles in terms of his filmmaking, his independent cinema roots, as well as the themes and concerns, specifically plot points, character points, and the social political dynamics fabric of this film Lone Star. So it's great to see the two of them in conversation here in this way. And Gregory Nava makes mention too of a work in his own career as well, which is definitely, for instance, El Norte, which is mentioned here in this discussion, and so there's also a Criterion release of this, just in case you're interested. So please check that out if you can. But this conversation with John Sayles is it's really quite wonderful. The opportunity is given here to talk a little bit about Texas, the place and the location, and how this film could be said, therefore, to be about borders and lines and crossing those lines. And that also has a kind of geopolitical consequence and contour as well when we understand the environment of the situation, as well as certain plot points as well involving the crossing of the Texas-Mexico border, and how this also serves certain character arcs and dynamics, in particular the Mercedes character, and how that is part of some of the things that we see her character engage with in some parts of the film Lone Star, quite directly, in fact. So, whereas also it allows for an interesting meta talk or conversation too about this idea of lines and blurring the lines and borders, etc., and how borders seem to be delineated across, say, maybe ethnic or racial lines, at least in the contours of the film, or one of the contours of the film Lone Star. And it's interesting to understand too casting choices, which are acknowledged by Gregory Nava and John Sayles here as well. The casting choices sometimes involved actors who are not from Mexico per se, but maybe from Cuba or Puerto Rico, etc. So, but they form this dynamic or fabric, which is also, I think, very much in constant conversation with the themes that are part of the film Lone Star itself and the characters. I draw your attention to the Mercedes character, which is something that Gregory Nava and John Sayles acknowledge, I think very rightly so, which is there's this idea of her own notion of who she is and her own background, and sort of the delineation, if you will, Spain and Mexico on the one hand, and it also has an interesting contour in how in her background and also Elizabeth Pena's background and the like. So that idea of casting also having its own sort of ripple effect in terms of the themes that are touched upon in the storyline of Lone Star, and how Gregory Nava and John Sayles are talking about it in a very direct way. It is unbelievable. Again, the reach of this film goes beyond the contours of the frame of the film, which is, I think, one of the brilliant aspects of this. So I'm glad of this reminder. And also this thing, too, about how there is a way in which this film could be said to be talking about sort of a social currency. The notion, as John Sayles puts it, we the people, as a kind of maybe a fundamental democratic principle. But we the people, what does we mean? Which is a really profound question that John Sayles poses. And I think it could be that it is maybe even uh, upon further inspection, maybe it's a very difficult and complex question to answer indeed, which is part of the reason why I think a film like Lone Star really lends itself to the conversation incredibly well, because it reflects and also respects that complexity and also yields a possibility for a myriad of answers, not just one, which is, I think, part of the point. And then this idea too about how that is also reflective of John Sayles' independent film roots, and Gregory Nava as well, the independent film roots, which means that this is a story that, again, can sit very uncomfortably, both in terms of its treatment on a social political spectrum, but also in terms of its plot and character arcs. I mean, there are aspects of this story, again, with not going into too much detail, that could be said to be quite challenging and actually quite disturbing. Non-copacetic is the phrase I think that's used here. So, that it sits quite uncomfortably, and that idea of discomfort is also part of the point of Lone Star. Watching Lone Star, and it makes one think. And maybe it pulls us in certain directions we might agree with, or maybe brings us into other areas which we might disagree with, or maybe never thought of before. And that's one of the things that makes it special. I mean, it's not something that gives us easy answers, which is, again, how it was designed. And also going back to the line, forget the Alamo, remember the Alamo. And this is one of the key points of this film, that is spoken and unspoken at the same time, and it becomes part of maybe a key moment of dialogue in a certain part, and also something that is embedded within, or as part of the sort of the macrocosm. It's both micro and macro, which is a brilliant feat indeed, and it's something that's touched upon in the essay, which we'll talk about as well. That's part of the insert of the Lone Star Criterion release. And then there is this idea too about how cinema is, and this is how Gregory Nava reminds us of, citing Roger Ebert. How cinema, one of the great vehicles, or one of the great reasons that cinema is that it could be described as being a machine for empathy. Which is this wonderful reminder of the power of cinema, and how John Sayles really devotes his energies to this philosophy about how this is a kind of a potential movement for change, or an agent for change, or a vehicle for a catalyst for change. If you have audiences being able to watch, or be willing to watch a film like Lone Star, like others, and then maybe not wholly agreeing or disagreeing one way or another, but at least being able to consider. The idea of empathy is a very wide-reaching notion. It is something that can transcend politics. It can be something that can transcend, kind of worldview or philosophy. It doesn't mean that one automatically subscribes or prescribes to a different worldview, a different set of politics, mind you. But the ability to empathize, the ability to at least consider and maybe understand and maybe appreciate. It doesn't have to agree all the time, but maybe there's the realm of understanding, empathy. Machine for empathy, a la cinema. That is a very compelling way to look at this and other works by Sayles and others. So well done. And the idea too of the way that useful legends are used, and this is a kind of discussion or a conversation about how past and present are in constant conversation with each other. And how legends are born, and how legends can be used, and how legends can be withheld, or how legends can be lies or the truth, depending on how we look at it. So, and this is also very much embedded in the very plot of the film Lone Star. So, this is great indeed. Talking about the time structure and how time interweaves, and how it's a suggestion about past and present being so closely knit that they oftentimes exist in the same camera shot. So that's a really great insight. Also, some of the characters as well. Joe Morton is one of the key main characters in here, or portrays one of the key main characters. Chris Cooper portrays one of the key characters in here, but I didn't realize this. But they don't share screen time together. I didn't realize this until it was mentioned here. But of course, and now that I think about it, of course. But that doesn't make their stories any less connected. I mean, they are so connected in this way. So that is and just the cast overall is is really quite something else. There's a very very minor point. There's a little bit of an aside about discussing John Sayles' career, and one of the I think great points of John Sayles' career is a reminder of how he was a writer. Focusing on writing novels and stories for other filmmakers. Piranha came up, and so there's a little bit of a maybe just a little bit of a joking feeling that I think Gregory Nava had when Piranha came up. But John Sayles, I think, was very respectful in tone, but still quite proud, or he displayed a sense of pride in the idea of Piranha. So I appreciated that. I appreciated his outlook on that, and I think it's a reflection, just the breadth of scope of John Sayles' career, and just the greatness of it. So I like the reference made. John Sayles is very quietly proud reaction to his work in Piranha. But of course, the main focus here is Lone Star. So the discussion here on Lone Star, I think, is quite something indeed. Really quite something indeed. So please check this discussion out if you can. It's approximately 38 minutes discussing between Gregory Nava and John Sayles on Lone Star. It's a really great discussion. Please check it out if you can. Then there is a interview with Stuart Dryburgh, and this is described as: cinematographer Stuart Dryburgh discusses his work on Lone Star in this interview, recorded for the Criterion Collection in New York in 2023. So this is really quite wonderful as well. Here we have 18 minutes, Stuart Dryburgh's discussion. He talks about how he came to this film. He reminds us about how there was a great working relationship between the director John Sayles and director of photography Haskell Wexler, but that due to certain circumstances, Wexler was unavailable, and due to certain circumstances also behind the scenes, that led to Stuart Dryburgh being the director of photography, cinematographer, working with, I should say, in collaboration with John Sayles for this, and how Stuart Dryburgh has such a respect for John Sayles' work. There's a kind of undercurrent of social political currency that he recognizes in other John Sayles work, perhaps a film like Matewan, for example. But it's not so, it doesn't overly power the film in a way that creates a sort of shift in balance. It is, I think, layered on in a nuanced and just enough way, so as to also never lose sight of the story or the characters. So this is quite a profound, I think, observation that Stuart Dryburgh makes on the cinema of John Sayles, which I think is so on the nose. It's so perfect. And then also talking about working in the widescreen format here, and how many of the reference points that Stuart Dryburgh and John Sayles agreed upon were taken from other films such as Sergio Leone. I mean, there's a wonderfully surprising discussion that Stuart Dryburgh makes here about reference points derived from or based upon certain shots from the Sergio Leone Western film, which is called Once Upon a Time in the West from the late 1960s, which is really, when I heard that and I thought about some of the shot compositions in that film, which is, I love that film so much, and then some of the shot compositions here in Lone Star, I didn't think about that before, and then I heard that comment from Stuart Dryburgh, and I think, my goodness, that is something else. I was thrilling to hear that, and I never thought about that before. So it gave me a lot to think about. And then also some details of the shooting, the on location shooting, the details of the environment, the sun, how some shots required sun, but the sun wouldn't emerge, but then other shots did have sun. He makes two very interesting examples of this: the opening shot of the opening sequence of the film, like very wide vista of exterior, and also there's another sequence somewhat around the middle of the film that takes place on a bridge. So these are both exterior outdoor scenes, and also talking about the production design, the Dan Bishop production design, etc. So and how that worked to the advantage in terms of the integration or the frame setup. And others, and then also the working with the actors too. There's some observation about his working with the actors, his interaction with the actors, also his observations of the great working relationships that John Sayles had with the actors that he was working with here. So yeah, and my goodness. And I should make mention too. I forgot to mention in the earlier supplement, John Sayles and Gregory Nava do speak about the other actors. Chris Christopherson working with Chris Christopher, working with Matthew McConaughey, and also the legendary status of Miriam Colon. How a number of people were starstruck when they were working with Miriam Colon, a legend, who plays the character of Mercedes in the film. And then others, I'm sorry. And then going back to Stuart Dryburgh conversation here, these are great. These are absolutely great. So please check it out if you can. It's wonderful. Sorry, the Stuart Dryburgh conversation I mentioned before, but let me say it again. It's approximately 18 minutes. And then last but not least, we have the trailer. So this is one of those trailers where it's a very 90s trailer, and I love it. There's a great voiceover in this trailer there's a kind of I didn't realize how nostalgic it would make me feel watching the trailer. But I thought it was really cool. But anyway, please check it out if you can, the trailer. So that's the state of things when it comes to the supplements here to be found with the Blu-ray accompanying the Lone Star 4K UHD Blu-ray release from Criterion. So I would have loved to have seen a commentary or heard a commentary. I would have loved to have seen that. I would have loved to have gotten that. Of course, I would love to see more about this film that I so love and cherish very much. So does it seem like maybe a little bit underwhelming in terms of the quantity of the supplements? I can see people feeling that way should they encounter this. So that's definitely a fair criticism one can make. But as I say, there is so much here densely packed in these two conversations, so as to make for, I think, very rewarding supplements engagement indeed. So please check out these supplements if you can. They are definitely worth it. Let me close out with a few more comments about the packaging design. I just want to point out this great cover art design, which we also saw mimicked in the 4K menu and the Blu-ray menu when you put the discs into the machine. Now look at that artwork. That is something else. That's great. Look at that. And it's it's an artistic rendering, a rendition of something that is essentially a key plot point that opens the film. So let me just point out here, art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, illustration Jacob Phillips, designer Eric Skillman, art production coordinator William Breeze, and art assistant Julie Sussman. So well done for this. I really like this art and the font as well. Very cool indeed. Let me just point out here too that before I continue, there's the leaflet, the insert, but the insert would go into the inner part of the plastic casing right here. It's this double disc stacking mechanism that we are used to seeing, but it would go in like here. But I like how there is, look at that there. There's a little detail of the inner part. I know it's not much in terms of, say, it looks like maybe something insignificant, but in fact, it's quite significant. So I really like this little detail of the cracks, and they seem to be forming something that looks like a star or something, but in any event. And then also look at the discs here as well. The sort of the clean look of this, I think that's really great, really good. I don't see any difference between the 4K disc look and then the Blu-ray disc look. So they look pretty much the same. There might be some differences, maybe yes, or maybe no, I don't know. But to my eyes, they look pretty much the same in terms of the fading nature of it, but that's okay. I like the seemingly simplistic look, but actually showcasing something that actually is potentially profoundly significant indeed. So I love that. That's, I think, so apropos a film like Lone Star. It seems simple on the surface, but actually, when you think about it a little bit, it becomes something where you go down certain paths and it becomes endless, which is brilliant. So in that way, something as seemingly simple as the cracked motif here has ramifications that are seemingly and potentially infinite, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it's in fact mirrored by what we see here with the leaflet here. So the fold-out leaflet, and you actually see it mirrored here in terms of the mimicking of the cracks here and forming something that looks like a star. So you have the foundation of that as well. So you see here there's a kind of echo effect as well, which I like, which is you put it here and you put the thing here, so you have this star effect, but then you remove it, there's a residue that's there. So that also could be a kind of metaphor for the residue of the past that still resides in the present. Wow, wow! It's all in the packaging and the leaflet of Criterion. The details, my friends, the details. This is great. But anyway, the fold out. I'm not a fan of the fold out type. I wish they would have gone with the supplement. I'm sorry, with the staple booklet. It is more robust. It allows for more pages. So I'm always somewhat deflated, or I feel somewhat disappointed, if I am perfectly honest, when I encounter a Criterion release that has the fold out, because I'm always wanting more. But that's okay, because what we get here is the utterly brilliant essay, Domino Rene Perez, and it's called Past is Present. My strong recommendation is to watch the film first, and then you can read this excellent essay, Past is Present. This is so thoroughly um, this is so thoroughly uh, enlightening. I've learned so much by this. It goes into some aspects that were touched upon in some of the discussion points of the supplements, the driver conversation, the John Sayles conversation. It also touches upon some other things. It does speak to the contours of the career of John Sayles, Return of the Secaucus 7, etc., and then some things, Matewan, and about sort of the social currency and also the rugged spirit of the independent cinema philosophy of John Sayles, which he holds dear and true to this present day, and also how it really serves the function and purpose and also the spirit of a film like Lone Star. So expertly, and also the various multifaceted aspects of the story, both in terms of ethnic relationships, of race relationships, of how it affects both maybe in a complementary level and also on a confrontational level, elements of the community as we see it here in this particular story, Frontera, Lone Star, where Chris Cooper's Sam is the sheriff. And so this is also entering into a discussion of how this has ripple effects beyond the frame of the film, but also turns itself back inwardly into the intimacy of the story of the film, which is, again, the brilliance of the structure of this. So and then also there's again aspects too of how this touches upon the African American community as portrayed by, or as maybe touched upon in some of the early sequences of the film, where we see characters, Dell and Otis in particular, how they are affected quite early on by some of the very abrupt plot points that also greet us when we enter into the first maybe 10 or 15 minutes of the film. So this is also, I think, a very important aspect of showing us how different characters are coming from different walks of life or different aspects of community perspective, and it sometimes works in terms of relationships between and among each other, but sometimes there are rifts, and sometimes those rifts occur in places that are actually quite unexpected and might fly in the face of sort of conventional outlooks on, say, how race and ethnicity are portrayed in cinema, and it goes back to something that was said in the Gregory Nava, John Sayles discussion in the supplements about how this is a very non-copacetic film, and how John Sayles really excels in this type of storytelling. And how it's a different mode of storytelling from something that Gregory Nava and John Sayles had described in their conversation about the modes of storytelling that might come about, say, from the Hollywood machine, for instance. So, I mean, there are many different modes of storytelling, that's for sure. But what is being done here is something that I think is done in a very deftly told John Sayles type of way, that is also acknowledging a lot of the complexities, and again, not yielding answers easily, which is something that Past is Present essay is citing quite confidently, quite rightly so, in my view. It's really quite a testament to the strength of this film, Lone Star, which is one of the reasons why this essay is so great. And also, I should point out too that there are some interesting details, some historical, or shall I say, other aspects of the ongoing debate, shall we say, that is touched upon in the film. And again, it's going into the heart of how history is viewed or to be viewed, or philosophies on how history is to be viewed or reckoned with. Again, going to this notion of remember the Alamo, forget the Alamo. And there's a kind of debate that is cited or discussed a little bit towards the final paragraphs of this essay, which is also, I think, very enlightening. Again, allowing for, I think, a multitude of viewpoints and reactions to that, which I think is very valuable. So this is, in my view, a very compelling, thought-provoking essay that is giving me much food for thought. So I'm so glad it's included here as part of this leaflet insert foldout. Past is present. So please check it out if you can. So, my dear friends, that concludes what it was I wanted to say, very briefly in a nutshell, about my excitement levels surrounding this Criterion release, Lone Star. I have to apologize once again for my sloppy, haphazard way of expressing myself in terms of this, but I hope you can forgive me, or I hope it's been made clear. I've hoped that in some form or another I've been able to convey, even to a partial degree, I hope I've been able to convey just how much I respect this film, I cherish this film. It asks questions, it asks of me questions that I don't know if I'm comfortable answering all of them. Maybe it goes in directions that might make me feel uncomfortable or might sit uneasy with me on the one hand. It also goes into other directions that I feel encourages that sorts of conversation. So I love that about this film. It has the room to go into areas that are very complex and murky, and allows us, the viewers, also to that room for consideration on our own terms, while also allowing us, in the words that are cited between Gregory Nava and John Sayles, this machine of empathy, which I think is a perfect way of describing what this film is. Lone Star. It's a machine for empathy. It's this way for us to consider various action items and ongoing concerns and conversations that are constantly going on, that are constantly happening, sometimes in spite of each other, but they're happening at the same time. And also at the heart of this idea of reckoning with the past, reckoning with something that might have happened, both the trauma writ large, or even the trauma on an intimate scale, all the way down to how this film opens, namely the discovery of the remains of the human skeletal remains. And so what this means, what is the secret, what is the heart of this? That is the brilliance of this film. It knows how to extend beyond its borders, its lines, while at the same time also allowing this introspection, this way inward. It goes outward and it goes inward at the same time, which I think is one of the brilliant things about this in the hands of John Sayles and company. What a film this is, and I'm so happy that it is at long last in the Criterion Collection for as many people to watch as possible, I hope. This is the film which is Lone Star. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Lone Star, including the films of John Sayles, and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.